right, good morning, everyone. I'd like to convene the February 22nd meeting of the Marin County Transit District Board of Directors. First item on our agenda is open time for public expression for items not on our agenda. Is there anyone who'd like to speak? Please come forward up to the podium.
Hi.
Good morning.
Hi, my name is Yvette Tannenbaum. I live in Sun Valley. I've been a resident of Sun Valley now for about 11 years, and I am proposing a much-needed local shuttle-y type bus that goes from one end of Fifth Avenue to the other that would be inclusive of some of the downtown shopping centers, also perhaps make a stop at Andy's and do its turnaround somewhere, either where there's some kind of a school for developmentally disabled kids at the end of it, or somewhere in that area, maybe not even that far, but go from there to the other side of the freeway service, Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, United, and if you want to, a possible loop even to Sprouts, but make this something for the neighborhood. There are so many residents that live in the Fifth Avenue vicinity who do not drive. Some of them are elderly and live in a senior residence and would probably love to have that kind of access right outside their doors. And I, for one, would, because sometimes I've been going intentionally, semi-intentionally, without a car since a few days before Christmas to just see what it would be like. I'm getting it fixed tomorrow. What it means is walking a mile and a half to the transit center frequently, because the Marin local transit buses are not really reliable for the times they say they'll be there, and if you miss one. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, Saturday, I was coming back I went to the other meeting, and I was on 4th Street trying to get a bus, and I was at the bus stop, and the bus passed me right by. And that would be another hour's wait if I chose to wait, which I did not.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
Okay, so I would really like to see something like this put on the table and initiated ASAP.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in open time on items not on our agenda? Okay, seeing no one, I'm going to move on to Board of Directors matters. The director have an item they'd like to talk about? Oh, seeing none. The General Manager's report. Good morning, Nancy.
Good morning. So let me start, and Robert, if you want to cue up one of our photos. Earlier this month, we had an opportunity to tour our Gillig manufacturing plant, and we have 11 hybrid buses being produced there, and it was a great tour. We had I think we saw 3, maybe 4 of our vehicles on the production line, and all 7 now of our 40-foot buses, which is a picture of one of them, and 4 of the 30-foot buses, all of those buses, the total of 11 buses have been delivered and will be in service in the next couple of weeks. We're just in the process of doing the final touches and getting them registered. So that's happening with those buses, and that's one of the ones that we brought by.
This is one of the ones you brought by the Civic Center that we had a chance to get on and look at.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. That is one of them. So yeah, we're very happy to have those in service or coming in service. The next thing about our buses is that back in November, the board approved us to do an exterior restoration to 10 of our articulated buses. And last week, our first re-decaled bus was returned to service, and it looks pretty good. And here's a photo of it. We reported to you then that we might have to have the buses repainted if we needed to. It turns out that they could just buff them and put the decals on, so we're in good shape there. We don't think the next 9 buses would need to be repainted either, so we think we'll make a little bit of savings. I think Robert just told me the next one of these will be put back in service. They're doing them one at a time, be put back in service this Wednesday. So yeah, so we see a new look there on our buses.
Right on time and under budget.
Yeah, exactly. So next thing I wanted to report on was our Redwood and Grant Transit Improvement Project. Last month in our status report to you, we reported that an appeal had been filed to the Nevada Design Review Commission's recommendation on the project. Landscape plan and final design details. And on February 2nd, the Nevada City Council heard the appeal, and then on February 9th, the council denied the appeal. 2 conditions were added to that council resolution when it was approved. The first requires Marin Transit to commission an arborist study and to prepare a tree protection plan for the existing redwood trees. And the second condition requires us to replace any new landscaping that fails within 12 months to the date of installation, and any existing redwood tree that fails within 12 months of project completion would need to be replaced. So we did agree with those, and again, very tree focused and landscape focused. But now we are fully approved and ready to move forward with the project. The last thing that I have then is on the December monthly monitoring report, and in your packet you have our report. In December of 2015, the ridership was up slightly from December of 2014. Fixed route ridership increased by about 2.2%, and system-wide ridership was up about 1.9%. So it's a little uptick.
Terrific.
Okay,
All right.
and that's all I had to report.
Any questions or comments from directors on the general manager's report? Any comments from the public on the general manager's report? Steve, please.
Yeah, thanks. I just, doesn't matter. Good, thank you. I would just ask if you could give us any information about the work you're doing with SMART and the City of San Rafael on the transit center here, just briefly.
Okay, so sure. Just kind of a quick update or reminder of where we have been. As you know, consultant study is underway that looks at both the interim solution for when the SMART train goes to Larkspur, an interim as well as a more permanent solution. And so far, the interim solution has been reviewed by the technical committee, which is comprised of the staff of all the agencies involved. So San Rafael, TAM, SMART, Golden Gate, Marin Transit. I think I've got everybody there. And so we have reviewed those. We've made some recommendations about the one that we think is the best of the three options. So we're looking at that. It's about a very round numbers, $5 million improvement. The permanent solution, or calling it the permanent solution, but the relocation that we would like as a permanent relocation is still under study, and the technical advisory group or the technical group has made a review of that as well, and I think that's going to come back to the more policy level group next month. So that's where I think we are. Certainly funding of that is a big challenge, both funding of the interim and then the longer range solution is a challenge. So is there anything else, any other questions about that or
Well,
further
just
update?
maybe just one other question. The interim solution, is it not moving forward until we find the money, or is it not moving forward because it's not ready to move forward yet?
Yeah, there are a couple things on that. So we are, there is an existing MOU that was signed by Marin Transit, by Golden Gate, that transferred the property initially. So there was property right away within the transit center that's being and elsewhere, everywhere on the alignment to SMART. So that MOU then required that another MOU or an agreement be in place before the construction begins at the transit center site. So on the transit center at Bettini. And so that MOU needs to be put in place, and that would, I'm guessing, we're talking about it having a selected interim solution as well as a more permanent solution. So yes, we're waiting for money and for the MOU, I think, is the way to look at it. And there probably needs some further study. I know the city is looking at the traffic impacts, for example, and I don't know if that's been fully explored. Certainly has not been completed for the potential permanent solutions. So we're
Thank you.
waiting for that.
Any other questions from directors? All right, seeing none. Next on our agenda is our consent calendar. We have 4 items on consent. The minutes from January 25th board meeting, contracts with Clark Services and Clean Solution Services, Inc. to provide bus stop cleaning and repair services. We have resolutions for low carbon transit operations program and the second quarter fiscal year 2016 financial report.
Yeah.
Director Rice.
I didn't want to pull this off to take separately, but did have a question about consent calendar item B on the bus stop maintenance contract. Just to remind me, Nancy, what's the sort of universe of total stops that we take care of, and then what this subset represents, because I know we have a lot more stops than that, and then how do we currently handle maintenance of the stops?
Right.
and cleaning?
So I'm going to ask Lauren maybe on some of the numbers about bus stops, because I'm not sure I know exactly the divvying up here, but you're right. We do bus stops that are served by Marin Transit. There are three that three types. There are ones that are shared with Golden Gate, and those are typically maintained by Golden Gate. There are those that are done by advertising entities, and so those are maintained by the advertising entity, so it's a part of that advertising package. And then there are those that are only by us and by Marin Transit, so those are stops that we maintain. So on the numbers, I'm not sure, so Lauren, I'm going to ask you maybe to come up and answer that.
Well,
so you can be the
does
mic.
this represent all of the stops? This can't. This is the one with, these are all
These
the
are-
shelter, ones with shelters that we maintain. Are there others?
These are the ones that we maintain. Yeah, you should come up. And this is really a continuation of the same practice that we have been doing in the past. But yes.
So this really represents just the ones that we've slowly taken over. So we've installed, where we've installed a shelter and new garbage or something like that, we've taken on the responsibility. So Marin City, we do all the power washing and cleaning of Marin City. And then also in Nevada, where we've installed new shelters that aren't under the advertising contract, we do the garbage there. And there's a couple others in Central Marin that we've taken on the responsibility. But mostly, I mean, it's a work in progress, and it's different at every stop in terms of our relationships with the jurisdictions. But over time, I can see it slightly increasing, but it's a place where we'll need to work with each of the jurisdictions and continue to establish that relationship.
Any other directors' comments or questions on consent? Any public comment on the consent calendar? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? It's approved. All right. We're now on to item 5 on our calendar, which is a public hearing on fixed route service changes for June 2016. Morning, Robert.
Good morning, President Sears, Board of Directors. Robert Betts, Director of Planning and Operations for Marin Transit. Item number 5 is an opportunity to receive public comment and consider any recommended adjustments to the proposed fixed route service changes that will ultimately be proposed and adopted for our March 28th meeting. The format of this item will be as follows. I'm going to do a detailed presentation and go route by route and talk through what the proposed changes are. Throughout the presentation and at the end of the presentation, I'd be happy to answer any clarifying questions in terms of what the changes are. I then want to talk through the recent outreach activities we've been doing over the last 30 days and talk about the upcoming outreach activities we'll be doing. At that point, I'd like to take additional public comment from anyone who's here today in the audience. And then the final part of this item is to request that your board give staff direction in terms of going back and looking at anything to reconsider or further analyze as part of the proposed service changes. Okay, so I'll go ahead and get started with the presentation. I will say the presentation was included in your packet, and the presentation uses a series of what I call schematic maps, which are very simple maps to explain the changes. We also have detailed maps, which actually show the actual geometric alignments, and those are also available at the table up front if anyone would like to follow on those maps as I walk through. The first slide here is a summary of everything that we're proposing to change, and this is a fairly significant service change package we are proposing. In total, it's a 17% increase in total service, and as you can see from the slide up here, 17 routes undergo some level of change, whether that's a simple schedule adjustment to make the route more reliable or a more detailed routing alignment, or potentially a service replacement where we are proposing to consolidate some services. So I'm not going to go through this in detail, but just want you to be aware that this is a fairly significant service change package. So I'm going to start geographically in the central part of the county and talk route by route on the proposed changes. So the first route is Route 23, and again, these schematic maps in terms of the color coding, and I know it's a little hard to see on the screen, but we're using kind of the dark gray color coding to represent no change to the route. We're using a green color to represent a new or modified change to the route. An orange color coding represents an area of service that will be replaced with another route, so something I'll cover on a another slide in terms of what services will replace service that's being discontinued. And then the red is service areas that do experience reduced or discontinued service. So starting with Route 23, the majority of the route would remain unchanged. However, the western terminus of this service is being proposed to move to downtown Fairfax. So it would move from Fairfax Manor to downtown Fairfax. Again, we would provide alternative service to Fairfax Manor on other routes, a new Route 23X, the existing 68, and a new extension of Route 228. In terms of the schedule, we're not proposing to do any schedule adjustments or changes. So Route 23X, this is a new route that we are proposing. The X indicates that it is an express route of sort. The route would operate from Fairfax Manor. It would serve all the local stops through Fairfax into San Anselmo. And then in between the San Anselmo hub and downtown San Rafael at the Transit Center, it would operate express using 2nd and 3rd Street, and it would not serve any of the stops between those 2 points. The route would continue through the canal. It would operate a clockwise, in a clockwise direction through the canal, and this 23X would not extend to Target like the regular 23 does. The route would operate weekdays only during the peak hours. Route 29 perhaps has the most amount of change that we are proposing to any single alignment. But for the most part, the route continues to serve really the core high ridership areas of the existing service. So starting in the canal, the route would continue to serve the canal, operating again in a clockwise fashion. But following the canal, it would go back to the transit center, allow transfer connections, and then to get down to the Sir Francis Drake corridor, it would go south on Highway 101. It would exit and serve the Larkspur Landing area, going through the Larkspur Landing Circle. And then it would continue west down Sir Francis Drake, all the way to College, serving College of Marin, traveling down College to Magnolia, back north on Bon Air, and the western terminus of the route would be at Marin General. So the western end would kind of be a counterclockwise loop, and the eastern terminus through the canal would be a clockwise loop. Service out to Manor, so this route does go out to Manor during the peak hours. That would be replaced by routes 22, 23, 23X, 68, and 228. So those portions between College and Marin and Manor would have alternative services providing that existing coverage. This is one area that we are looking to do discontinuation of service, and this is for 3 stops along the Anderson Drive area, which is east of Bellum. So where if you're familiar where the old Wendy's is, but it's really where Bellum hits Anderson Drive by the Golden Gate Transit Yard. Those first 3 stops as you go east would have no local service following the proposed service changes. There are some select regional routes that would provide service to at least 2 of those stops, but our services would not provide any service following the proposed service change if adopted. Route 228. Route 228 is currently a weekend-only route. We are proposing to make this a daily service. In addition to adding service, we're proposing to make a small adjustment to the routing, which would allow it to serve some of the areas of Larkspur Green Brae south of Sir Francis Drake. From Sir Francis Drake, it would take La Portale down to South Alicio and serve some of the residential and medical areas along South Alicio, and then come back to Bon Air serving Marin General. So this is a small deviation of service that we've had a number of requests for over the years. We've tried some shuttle services in this area. Existing 221, existing 222 have provided service in this area with some pretty decent ridership. The one area we are proposing to do and that we didn't do with those services is actually formalized stops through here, and we've been meeting with the city. We used to operate this as what we call flag stop service, but if we move forward with this proposal, we would propose to actually implement stops so riders are really aware of where the service goes and how to pick up the service. Okay, moving to Southern Marin. Starting with Route 17, Route 17 has no proposed changes to the alignment and very minor schedule adjustments proposed, primarily to increase reliability of the route during the peak hours and on the weekends when we hit a lot of congestion on this service. Route 22, again, no major changes to the alignment. We are looking at some small schedule adjustments, specifically the early morning service and the late night service. So we are proposing to consolidate the first 4 southbound trips that leave really before, I think, 6:30 in the morning. We are proposing to make those 3, take the 4 trips that currently just go as far as College of Marin and make those 3 trips that go all the way down to Marin City. And then in the evening, we're proposing to cancel the last northbound trip, which is an 11 o'clock trip that leaves Marin City. So the last trip leaving Marin City would be 10 p.m. And we are proposing to add 2 more later trips southbound from the transit center that would also provide service as late as 10 p.m. leaving the transit center. Route 219, no major changes proposed to the alignment. We are looking at some potential runtime adjustments to improve reliability and on-time performance, and we're also working with Golden Gate to determine if some schedule adjustments are needed to meet either the ferry times or the regional services around Strawberry. Route 36, again, no proposed changes to the alignment, but we are proposing significant service increases. So this route is currently a weekday peak-only route. We're proposing to make this a daily route and have it operate every 30 minutes. So this is a route that connects the canal to central San Rafael to the transit center and then operates south to Marin City using the 101 bus pads. Route 71. Route 71 is our Highway 101 local corridor service. It currently operates between downtown Novato and Marin City. We're making a number of proposed changes here. One is to extend the route to Sausalito, so this would provide additional coverage on that 101 service as far south as the Sausalito Ferry Terminal. We're also proposing to operate this route express between Ignacio and the Tiburon Y. It would continue to serve the transit center, but based on the ridership at those bus pad stops in between Ignacio and the Tiburon Y, and the added service that we're proposing through some of the other service changes, we feel that it's a good trade-off to speed up the service, provide quicker end-to-end travel times from the northernmost and the southernmost parts of the county, and really focus in on the core ridership areas of this service. This would be a weekday-only service that would operate once an hour. We are looking at also doing some 30-minute service during the peak hours on this service. Okay, moving to Northern Marin. I'm going to start with 2 routes that would be replaced by other routes. So I'm going to start with Route 45, Route 45K. This is a route that serves the Transit Center up Lincoln Avenue to the Civic Center, Northgate Mall, and then the 45K extension continues on to Kaiser. So we are proposing to replace this service, and I'll talk about the services that will replace Route 45, 45K. And Route 259, this is our most successful shuttle service that we currently operate in terms of total passengers and riders per hour. This route parallels largely the Route 49. It does provide some additional service to Kaiser, so I'm going to talk through the proposed changes we have to replace Route 259. So starting with Route 35, again, along with Route 36, this is perhaps the single most the largest increase of service of any single route. Currently, the Route 35 is basically a circulator service that connects the canal to downtown San Rafael. It operates from 5 in the morning till 2 in the morning, 7 days a week, every 30 minutes. So it's our highest ridership route. It's our most productive route. The proposal here is to take that route and continue it further north all the way to Novato. Continuing from the transit center, it would continue on the existing Route 45 alignment, so this would backfill the service on Route 45. It would continue up to the Civic Center to Northgate Mall. And then following Northgate Mall, it would go up to Novato using the 101 bus pads. So this is one of the routes that'll provide some of the replacement service for the Route 71. And our plan at this point is to go all the way to Redwood and Olive with this service. It would continue to operate every 30 minutes daily. It would only operate, I believe it's from about 6 in the morning until 7 or 8 o'clock at night, so it wouldn't offer those extended hours that the current Route 35 offers. But we would continue to offer those extended hours to the canal, the existing service. So it would be kind of a short run part of this proposed alignment. Route 49, again to replace service on Route 259, we would propose to make this a daily service. So right now it's a weekday only service, so we'd propose to have it operate 7 days a week. And we would propose to implement 30-minute service during the weekday peak periods to capture some of the additional ridership from the replacement of Route 259. Otherwise, no changes to the alignment. Route 233, again, no proposed changes to the alignment. We are looking to do some minor runtime adjustments to improve the reliability and on-time performance. Route 245, this is a new shuttle alignment we are proposing, largely to replace the service to Kaiser and to Health and Human Services on Smith Ranch Road. And I'll talk through in the next slide the changes to the Health and Human Services service. But this would operate 7 days a week. This would be a daily service. It would operate once an hour, and it would connect the transit center and then use the freeway to go up to Freitas Parkway as a more express service up to Kaiser. And then from Kaiser, it would go up Las Colinas to Lucas Valley and then continue east over Smith Ranch Road, serving Contempo Marin and Health and Human Services campus. Weekend service to this part of the county has been a strong desire in the past, and this proposed change would create that opportunity. Route 251, this is our local Novato shuttle service. We're not proposing any major changes. However, the alignment in the southern part of Novato is proposed to be changed to serve Hamilton Parkway. So right now the route comes from Alameda del Prado over on Nave, continues north to Main Gate, and then goes east to terminate at the Hamilton Theater. We're proposing to make this kind of a loop service at the end, so it would go Nave up to Hamilton Parkway in response to getting riders closer to the Hamilton Marketplace. And then we are looking to make some minor schedule adjustments and some adjustments to the evening service based on the new Route 49 service. And Route 257. Route 257 is an existing shuttle route. We would continue to operate it weekdays every 60 minutes. We are proposing to make an alignment adjustment. This route currently serves the Health and Human Services campus and Smith Ranch Road. We would propose to have this service now serve Miller Creek and Las Colinas and Kaiser Hospital, again, to replace some of the service lost from the 259. We're also proposing to add later evening service on this route, again in response to the 259 that operated southbound service later through this corridor. So we can come back to this slide if we need to. This is more of a reference slide, and this diagram shows specifically weekdays at the San Rafael Transit Center which routes make connections on the pulse. So each one of these little boxes shows the different pulse periods. Every 15 minutes we have routes that converge and facilitate those transfers. One thing about this service change package is we have more opportunities now with the 15 and 45 after. So it's really striving for that 15-minute frequency, not necessarily on the same route, but in the same corridor of service. So the proposed change, along with the proposals that Golden Gate is proposing, would provide 15-minute service daily up and down the 101 corridor and provide 15-minute service east-west between San Anselmo and the canal. So that was a big focus of the short-range transit plan as well as this proposed service change package. And this diagram further highlights, again, this is the 101 corridor, and it's not necessarily one route that will be providing those services every 15 minutes. It's a combination of routes, and some of those routes stay just on the 101 corridor. Some of those routes continue to San Francisco, some go to Sonoma County, and some now are proposed to go into the canal. So again, we can come back to this slide as reference, but there will be a lot of service in that corridor if these proposed changes are implemented. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any clarifying questions the board may have at this point before I talk a little bit about kind of our public outreach process and some of the comments we've received today.
Any questions from the board?
Just one.
Director
Robert,
Rice.
late night service, going out to Fairfax, so that ends at 10 as the last trip. Is that the same as it's been?
We aren't proposing to change any of the schedules going to Fairfax at night. And I know that the weekends is a little bit later than the weekdays, but I think 10 o'clock is the last
Is
trip.
10 o'clock pretty much it for late night service and on the east and west sides for us, for our local service?
For the most part, so north-south, we do operate a little bit later. For
Yeah.
example, in Marin City, we had the trip starts at 10 o'clock, gets into the transit center at 10:55, so it's a little bit later between San Rafael and Marin City along that Route 22 alignment. Actually, the regional service provides some pretty late service along the 101 corridor. So but really east-west outside of kind of our core area.
And we've talked about that in the past. I know that in Fairfax, that's pretty, booming now at nighttime. And a lot of restaurants and bars and the theater there. And they've asked for increased or later night service, and I'm assuming you've looked at that, or we've tried it and it hasn't panned out. 10 o'clock is pretty early now.
Yeah,
It's the only part of the
In
county that stays up
Fairfax.
late, apparently.
I think we're entertaining adjustments and suggestions. That could be one thing we go back and look at. I think once we start to package this together and put some dollars to it, we may see how much we have in terms of expansion, and that could be one area that we further evaluate. We have looked at ridership. I mean, I think if we were experiencing overcrowding on some of those later trips today, we'd probably include it as part of this proposal, but we can go back and put it.
Yeah, I don't think it's about overcrowding so much as you've got a bunch of stranded, probably, workers potentially. And I know, and in all of our communities, is such an issue that employees are discouraged from bringing in their own cars. Anyway, I know it's not necessarily ours to answer and solve, but I do think that 10 o'clock on the weekends is pretty early. But I would be happy to reach out also to the Fairfax Chamber and see what sort of critical mass they have there that's staying late in town.
I should mention it did come up in our focus groups, so it is something that does come up from time to time.
And it is one of those chicken and egg problems, right? If you don't have the service, then you can't measure ridership, so then you can't decide if there's a need. So it might be something just to obviously think about more, but consider for a potential pilot and see if there is. I think it'd be a great idea to do the survey of the business establishments to get a sense of how many employees they have and whether that might be a viable option. There may be people who are out in the evening who would appreciate it too. This comes up periodically with
Mhm.
Golden
Right.
Gate Transit too, and the ferries wanting to get in and out of the city. And it is challenging, so. Once you ask people how often would they really ride it, doing it once a month isn't quite sustainable for us, so.
That said, the 15-minute service is great.
Stephanie
Yeah,
Peters, yeah.
thank you. I just had a question, Robert, going forward, if in your discussion of community outreach, you would also be talking about how these schedule changes will be communicated to the public. There's a lot of them, I'm curious. And I also just want to take the opportunity to compliment you on this graphic, your maps, your tables, everything that you've done to present information to the board. It makes it easier to orient and really understand the changes, so thank you for that.
Exactly. I think it's a good lesson for us on how complicated your job is, too. So, Mary Beth, did you have a
Yes,
question?
I also would like to follow up on Stephanie's compliments. This is very understandable and very useful to us. My question, though, is about what your plans are for communicating to riders where there are multiple routes serving a particular location, and that even though they may have arrived on one particular route, there may be a different route that might be more convenient for them. What's the plan for letting riders know?
Sure. Do you want me to cover that now, or do you want to? Okay. So, yeah, as you can see from the timeline diagram, we are still in what we call the refinement process. So, once we get official adoption of the service changes, then we go into outreach mode and implementation mode. And we do that a number of different ways. We develop print media that we can actually pass out, that can be translated. We hire staff, or what we call the streets team, to go out and actually ride service, to be at the transit stops and start to promote the changes and discuss the changes one-on-one with passengers. We go back to a lot of the communication tools we've used to do the outreach to date in terms of emails and our community partners and partnering on to local meetings to talk about what those changes are with the community. We'd also like to use more and more, to the extent possible, trip planning tools like Google Transit, like 511, because oftentimes those do a really good job of putting side by side what all your options are. I'm sure you're aware, but we're also working with a consultant right now to design a new transit guide that's really focused on the local service. And we've talked about how we can incorporate some of those items into that print guide. Even if it is a digital tool, how can we direct people to that digital format? Providing them information on the real-time information on different apps that perhaps they could use to help plan their service. And we've also talked about how the print guide can display alternative services. So maybe we don't provide as much that's just route by route by route, but maybe we talk about it in terms of corridors. So we're still working with them to see what that piece will look like, but it is important. For example, if you're traveling between downtown San Rafael and San Anselmo, there's 5 different routes you'll be able to use, and ultimately you just want to get to your destination as fast as possible. You don't care specifically about which route you take. So that'll be the next wave of efforts in terms of how we get that out to our riders.
And I think hadn't we done a publication or a flyer a couple of years ago for folks in Marin City in particular that really showed them, if you want to go shopping at this location or you want to go to Marin General Hospital, here are your options for getting there. And I think that kind of information can be really helpful, so you know, situated from where you are, how you can get out to where you might want to get to. So, thank you. Nancy, do you want to say?
I just want to add in that, we'll be coming back to the board with our outreach plan for how we're going to actually do that. The whole process, kind of Robert just summarized. But we also learned a lot through this last outreach process, and I think we've gotten some good feedback from our riders about how they like to see the information and what, so some of the things you're mentioning, in fact, were things that they've said, of course. So, yeah.
Director Arnold?
Yes. When you were getting feedback for this portion of it, did you have a Spanish translator in some of the meetings?
Yes,
Great.
all of them. So we had the workshops that we had, and Robert's going to go over some of this. But,
Okay.
but yeah, all the workshops had a Spanish translator available. We had also focus groups, and we had one that was Spanish speaking.
Great.
And then we also had one of the workshops and focus groups that was in the canal that was all in Spanish as well. So,
Thank you.
yes.
Any other questions from directors? Oh, yes. Director Lucan.
It's really exciting to, this amount of service increase. So thank you for the report. The one question that I had with regards to the Hamilton area, as service is increasing there slowly, I'm hearing from some of the residents there that the Hamilton shuttle is becoming somewhat redundant in some cases, and just wanted to hear what sort of feedback you heard from that community about that HOA-funded Hamilton shuttle with regards to these service increases.
Yeah, so we've had informal discussions over the years about the Hamilton shuttle and our services, and I think the last time was when we made the adjustments to the Novato Dial-A-Ride. Novato Dial-A-Ride is a general public shuttle service available to Novato residents that for trips within Novato, so start and end in Novato. And the last opportunity was, is there an opportunity to make that Dial-A-Ride focus more on the needs of the Hamilton area, and can we do some adjustments? I think and I'm not exactly clear how that service is being used today. I think from what I understand, it is underutilized. I think with, with some new activity in Hamilton, perhaps SMART coming online, it could have a new purpose. It could be more of a first last mile, but I think ultimately it's probably up to the homeowners to really decide how that service could fit in. Now, these service changes, along with what's there today, provides quite a bit of service to Hamilton. And in some ways, that Hamilton Theater, from time to time, will have 2 or 3 routes there, allowing transfer opportunities and service at least every 20 or 30 minutes. So there is a lot more service there today than when that Hamilton shuttle started. But it does, it doesn't really go all the way into Hamilton. It doesn't go down by the hangar buildings or kind of further into the community. Our service is really focused on the Hamilton Parkway main gate area.
Yeah, it's mostly anecdotal, but what I'm hearing is more and more folks are utilizing the marine transit services. Which more options is always better, but that's great to know there's that collaboration taking place.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead.
Remember, we talked to the city regarding having marine transit systems go down into the affordable housing projects. And the city's, I think Marin Transit said you'd have to have a sidewalk for the people to wait to pick up passengers, and that's something that the city might want to look at, building a sidewalk. We could do it, yeah.
All right, Robert, I think you had more on public
Yeah,
outreach,
a
right?
little bit more. So before we open it for public comment, I want to talk a little bit about the outreach we've done today. So since our last board meeting where we set the public outreach and public hearing process that was on January 25th, we've been working collaboratively with Golden Gate Transit to alert our riders and the general public of the proposed changes. So in total, we've done a number of different items. The first, we held 3 focus groups. And I should mention that some of this has been done since we finalized your board packet, so some of this information is new information, but we've now concluded 3 focus groups with nearly 40 participants. One of those was held in Spanish. We've held 4 community workshops, again in partnership with Golden Gate Transit, so you could come out and view the changes both for the regional network as well as the local network. In total, at the workshops within Marin County and the most recent workshop we had that was in the canal, we had 50 participants. And locations for those workshops include downtown Novato, Marin City, downtown San Rafael, and most recently in the canal. Staff has also been out attending various community meetings, the Marin Community Services District meeting, Marin Mobility Consortium, the Paratransit Coordinating Council, the food banks, the Tuesday food banks in Novato and in the canal, the monthly residents meeting at Homeward Bound, the Marin Strategic Catalyst meeting, and the monthly meeting of the Marin County Planning Directors. They're providing information primarily using our fact sheets and the maps that we have here in terms of what the proposals are, and encouraging people to provide comments. We have self-addressed stamped envelopes with comment cards that they can fill out and mail in. In addition to these in-person opportunities, we've been working with Golden Gate to notify our community partners and our riders of the proposal. This includes ads in the local papers, ads in the local radio stations, ads on the buses, at the high ridership stops, and through our email communication. So those that have registered both through Golden Gate and Marin Transit. We've been primarily promoting our fact sheet and our website in terms of directing people for more information. We also developed a specific web page, which is the 2016 Service Change web page, and since January 25th, we've had over 600 views of that website specifically. In addition to the high ridership stops that we provided the notices, we developed 8 different custom notices for 25 stops around the county that would specifically experience either a reduction or that discontinuation of service. So all those areas that were either highlighted in orange or red where the change would impact service levels, we did specific stop notices that really detailed what the proposed change would be, and on that notice we included how to comment, including this meeting here today. In addition to providing comments at the in-person events, which staff was documenting, we've also been taking comments through an online comment form, by email, by phone, and by mail. In total, to date, we've received approximately 45 comments. 14 of those were included in your board packet, and 31 of those we've received since that board packet was finalized, primarily at the events Thursday night. We had 2 events Thursday night and the workshop Saturday morning. We also received a letter in the mail Friday that should be in front of you today. There was also one specific comment at the Saturday workshop that was requested to be read at today's meeting, so I'm going to read that. It was on behalf of the League of Women Voters. It says, we're concerned about how the progress of SMART is making in the downtown San Rafael that will affect the 6,000 users of the transit center. And the question is, what is Marin Transit doing to prepare for the best temporary solution for SMART's effects on the transit center? We feel the transit district needs to assess the potential impacts of SMART stations on its riders, relocate the bus stops as conveniently as possible, and the temporary relocation should not be a permanent relocation. So, the majority of the comments we did receive were either in favor of the changes or unrelated to the specific proposals. We will be summarizing all the comments we receive up until March 18th, so our public comment period will stay open until March 18th. So the comments we receive at today's meeting, all the comments we've received at the most recent workshops, the ones you have in your packet today, we will be summarizing those and providing those for your March 28th meeting. So I think with that, I'll go ahead and suggest we open it for public comment.
Great, super, thank you, Robert. So I am going to open the public hearing now. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. And how many folks want to speak? Anybody want to raise their hand? Let me know. You want to come up to the podium and get things started? You can come right up here. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm an ethnomusicologist and a sometimes performing musician.
Would you mind telling us your name?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, no worries, we can hear you, but I'd love to know your name, if you'll share it.
Peter Horace.
Thank you.
And I live in Old Larkspur, okay? Now, the cutbacks on the 22 a couple of years ago has made it difficult for me to have any kind of a nightlife in Marin. The last 22 leaving the transit center to Larkspur is 8:30 p.m. So you can't do any kind of a nightlife. There's a similar problem with Fairfax. And so that leaves me to Sausalito, where there is a 17. There's also the problem that in the old days, the 22 went all the way to Sausalito. So I could take the ferry home or go to the clubs in Sausalito and then go directly home without having to change. That was truncated a couple of years ago. I don't know why. The other changes that I've seen here that are very, very positive. I didn't have a chance to make inputs, but there are 2 or 3 changes that are small but are very, very positive for me. The other concern is taking the other ferry to Larkspur Landing. Is there a connection with a bus that would go home there? I know that happens in rush hour, but there's nothing for the last ferry. So that would be my one concern.
And I'm going to ask Mr. Best to answer questions after we've allowed everyone a chance to speak. So thank you. All right. Who else would like to speak? All right, going once, going twice. I'm going to close the public hearing and come back, Robert, and ask you to address the questions that were raised by our speaker.
Sure. I think the changes to the 17 and 22 that occurred in 2013, we aren't proposing to make any additional changes except for the later service. So we are proposing to have now a 10 p.m. southbound trip out of San Rafael. Right now, the last trip does leave at 8:30, so it gives a little more coverage late at night. Again, another Fairfax late night request was echoed, and then the late connections to Larkspur Ferry. We do deviate Route 17 through the Larkspur area late at night, and this was largely in response to the late night worker need in Larkspur Landing. And I don't have the exact time, but I believe there's a trip after 11 o'clock that you can pick up, not in the ferry terminal, but along Sir Francis Drake, that will take you back to the transit center to make further connections. So that, again, assuming your connection service runs that late, there is some additional opportunities that we do deviate late at night to provide that service. And quite honestly, I'm not familiar how it lines up with the late night ferry service, but it does serve that area, so you don't have to walk to the Lucky Bus pad.
Maybe while you're talking about doing the outreach, we should prepare a flyer that's sort of night owls in Marin.
Nightlife.
How to navigate after 8 p.m.
And we did some extensive study, and David Escobar's in the room, about late night needs in Marin County, primarily for the workforce, a couple years ago, the Job Access Mobility Project, and I think there's still a lot of relevant recommendations in there.
Absolutely.
Just tagging on to that theme, what we are finding at the Marin Economic Forum is that a lot of young workers that are especially in the biotech community, which we're trying to attract, they want a nightlife, and that's one of the reasons why they don't move here, is because it's suburban and everything closes, or they can't get transportation, and in the city they didn't need that. So that's something to keep in mind to attract
We're
employees.
going to get them to move to Fairfax.
Yes. Okay.
They're moving, yeah.
Oh, they're moving to Nevada.
All right, Robert, anything else on your list?
No, I just generally wanted to talk through kind of next steps and time frame. So we are, again, the public comment period will be open through March 18th. We'll continue to collect comments and review those comments. And then at the March 28th meeting, we do propose to come back with a final package, looking at potentially some minor adjustments based on some of the public comment we've received, based on the focus group meetings we had. We'll also be including a Title VI assessment that'll describe any potential disproportionate impacts on minority or low-income populations. And we will be looking then for your board to adopt on March 28th, so we can move into the implementation phases.
Thank you. Excellent presentation. Any other comment, input from the board? All right, we will see you on the 28th. Very,
Okay.
very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert. Very well done.
And team.
Yeah, exactly, and the whole team out there, exactly. All right, so now I'd like to move on to item 6 on our agenda, which is staffing for school transportation planning and administration. Good morning, Barbara.
Good morning. Jump right into it.
Yeah, jump right in.
All right, change of topic. This item regards Marin Transit's role in supporting the yellow bus services in the county of Marin. Just to kind of refresh your memory on where we've been with yellow bus over the last few years. We started with a Caltrans planning grant and did an extensive study on coordinated school transportation. We transitioned the Ross Valley School District from GGT-operated public transit to Michael's Transportation, a yellow bus service. We assisted Tiburon and Belvedere in their planning efforts to expand their school bus service, and they implemented that this last September. And then most recently, we've been assisting Mill Valley and Kentfield in determining whether they want to get into the yellow school bus business in terms of doing some planning for them. Last December, as you recall, we held a special workshop to talk about this study and to talk about our role in yellow bus and school service. One of the major findings from that study was that Marin Transit's public transit would be best used to serve high schools, and that the K through 8 should transition to yellow bus. The board directed staff at that point to come up with a 5-year transition plan to basically make that a reality. We're still in the process of doing that transition plan, but in the interim, 2 school districts have approached us and asked us to take a role in managing their yellow bus school service, and they've offered to pay a fee for that. The 2 districts are Reed Union, which is Tiburon and Belvedere, and Mill Valley. And you have the letters in your packets. So what we're asking from you today is authorization for our general manager to begin negotiating with those 2 school districts to provide that support service, and to determine what the cost of that might be. And really, most importantly, to determine the split of responsibilities. I think that we need to make sure that our role is clear in terms of what we're doing. Are we interacting with the contractor? Are we planning? Are we actually, what are we doing, and then what do we expect the school district to do? So that's what we would be asking you to authorize the general manager to do, to actually determine those roles and then determine the cost of that. But the other point that we need to make is that what we've learned in this last year is that overseeing the Ross Valley School District is very staff intensive, and we track our staff time quite carefully for that, because we can't bill it to any of our federal grants, and so we have to keep it in a separate fund. And what we found is that combined it takes about one staff person just to manage that service, and that excludes the amount of planning time that we've provided to Mill Valley and Kentfield. So if we're going to expand that role of supervising yellow bus contracts, we'll really need an additional staff person. And so the second part of today's ask is that you authorize us to go out and look and see if a staff person is available to do that work. So if you authorize those two things today, we'll begin those negotiations and we'll return to you with the actual contracts for your approval. So this isn't your last bite at this apple. So any questions?
Are there any questions from the board? Yeah, Mary Beth.
I've got a question. Could you explain to me how the staff person that you're looking for and the notion of setting up a sort of a permanent person to oversee the yellow buses is consistent with the transition notion of transitioning to the school districts being more responsible for the K-8 yellow bus service?
Well, I think that that's a really good question, and I think one of the things that's happened is that real life has kind of jumped ahead of planned life, and so part of the complexity of bringing this to you today is we haven't put together a transition plan, and so some of what the board would have to do is kind of take a leap of faith to say, well, but we are very interested in this and we want to move forward without having that transition plan in place. What we are recommending in the staff report, though, is that if we do sign contracts with these school districts, we make them one-year contracts. So this is, as with so much that we do, this would be a pilot to find out, does that work? Is that a good relationship? Are there too many cooks in the soup, So I guess the way I'm answering you is to say we don't have a clear vision of how this exactly relates to transitioning, but it's another opportunity, just like the opportunity we had, I think, with Ross Valley, to say, well, how will that look? With Ross Valley, we took a chance at running that in yellow bus before we had finished the big study, and we would be taking some chance here of working with more intensely with school districts before we've finished the transition plan.
And would it be appropriate to have some sort of placeholder maybe in the contracts that say there's more overhead involved in providing this service that we would anticipate allocating to the yellow bus service?
Well, certainly part of the negotiations, and some of what we've shown in our board letter, is what we expect the cost of this to be. And so the negotiations will be what part of that cost is the school district, or in the case of Tiburon and Belvedere, they're planning to have a JPA. What portion of that cost are they willing to cover, and are we willing to accept to do the work? And I agree that there should be, the way I would visualize the contract, and again, we haven't negotiated it yet, but the way I would visualize it would be a one-year contract with potential options, and certainly we'd want the funding to be a part of that reopener, because we are all learning as we go on this.
If I can just add in just a little bit in terms of how that might be structured, and what we were thinking when we came to you back in at the workshop on this, that transition plan. You're right, we still have a lot of work to do, but there could be any of the yellow bus services that are needed throughout the county could reside in different organizational structures. I think that's what we said, and so it could be, depending on your board's pleasure, whether we would do that, Marin Transit would do that, whether there's another entity, a JPA, which we've looked at other structures, examples elsewhere, Sonoma, the Marin Pupil Services, that sort of thing. That's another structure. I think what our step today would do is it gives us a staff person to be doing this, and if the transition plan says, but this really needs to reside somewhere else, I think that's probably simply done. I think it wouldn't be anything that we would be so wed to that we couldn't have an employee be transitioned to another organizational structure. So I think that's, I don't think we're, and because we are doing this short term, as Barbara said, I don't know that we're getting ourselves too far down the stream of preventing us from, excluding any option in the future for an organizational structure.
It would retain, the simplest option is just to have the person, if that person is within Marin Transit, to just allocate those costs to the yellow bus service and cover those costs. That's the simplest way.
And that's
what
that's exactly what we're trying to do here, and would continue to do in the future. Yeah.
Stephanie, did you have a comment or question?
Thank you. On page 23, there's a useful breakdown of tasks and responsibilities. And just for my clarification, there are some items where school district, which I assume is Mill Valley School District, and the JPA, which I assume is the Reed, Belvedere, Tiburon School District, are jointly listed. There are others where, such as with bus pass sales, where the school district is not listed, and I'm assuming this is reflective of discussions you've had where the situation is different between the JPA and the school district. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that is reflective of that, and this is really a summary of a much longer, list of very definitive tasks, and I think that is what a lot of the negotiation will be about, and each contract may be different depending on what each district wants. I think one of the things, though, that we're quite clear on is that we don't want to be the holder of the contract. We don't want to have that fiscal responsibility, so that we would expect either the school district or the JPA to sign the contract with the provider, and then whoever signs the contract with the provider, whether it's the school district or the JPA, then signs a contract with us to manage that.
I think that's great, and I would just point out that, to Mary Beth's point, that having the affected school districts provide funding for staffing, I think is really optimal and a great thing to pilot. Should we be asked to do more of this, that would be a model that I think we could build on.
Right, I think that's, and one of the benefits, as you say, we have had the Ross Valley experience to learn from. Tiburon, the Reed Union School District, launched its own, yellow bus project last year and learned a tremendous amount from that. And so, I think all of that is good, because both the school districts and Marin Transit can go into these conversations very well informed about exactly what is on that long list of things that we've got to make sure are very clear for everybody. And I really have to give credit both to Mill Valley School District and for Reed Union School District of stepping up and recognizing that there is a need on their part to fund. And also recognizing that transportation expertise is here, not there. So this is a very good partnership. Did you have something, Kate?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you.
Right.
Yeah, because I know there's been a lot of work and frustration, but a lot of successes too. I think that you, in the staff report, you make the statement that the Marin Transit's long-term role in bus school service is still evolving, and yellow school bus service back in Marin County or in the places where it hasn't been it's sort of a baby. It's been rebirthed, and it is evolving, but having come off a week with all the schools out, and the traffic
was great, wasn't
was unbelievable. And so, I think that it's really important, the role we're playing, Marin Transit is playing right now, in helping to support schools transitioning back into yellow school bus, and obviously many of these school districts don't have the staff that they used to have and or the expertise. And then we all know the industry also the rolling stock may not be out there, and there's driver issues. So I think it's important that we're playing this role in supporting and aiding yellow school bus service, because I think it really is key. I think the taxpayers that are contributing to Measure A appreciate anything that Marin Transit can do towards relieving congestion, and certainly that's what yellow bus school service can do. So as the relationships evolve and the service evolves, I think that we can play a vital role in making for more successes.
Great. Director Kinsey.
Yeah, thanks. I certainly support this, appreciate your previous involvement and your willingness to be involved further, and the recognition that it will take more staffing. This really is an experiment still, and I think that there's two things to realize is that the funding for this expansion into Mill Valley is dependent on other partners, the city and the county being a part of it. And these kind of pilot projects are great, but they aren't sustainable. And so I just really want to emphasize that we need to get our arms around the long-term sustainable funding strategy. And I also want to mention that San Rafael and my wonderful little Lagunitas School District out in West Marin are running their yellow bus service without any subsidies, and that as we go forward, if we are going to be providing service, we need to recognize those who've taken the responsibility on already on their own.
Good point. Okay, any other questions from directors? Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on this matter? Seeing none, I'll bring it back here.
I'll move this.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? That's approved. Thank you very much, Barbara. And finally on our agenda is the Muirwood Shuttle Weekday Service. Welcome back, Robert.
Another pilot project. Moving forward. So item number 7 is to approve continuation of the weekday Muirwood shuttle service. At our January meeting, we provided a comprehensive overview of both the weekday and the regular weekend holiday service from last season. Today we are asking you to approve continuation of the weekday pilot project in 2016 with a few minor changes. The first change would be to operate the service along the existing Route 66F alignment. This alignment serves Sausalito, the local stops, and Marin City, but does not stop at Pohono or Manzanita. There was a great deal of confusion last year in riders about where the weekday goes, where the weekend goes, and moving the pickup points between the weekend and the weekday also added confusion. So the proposal would be to continue to just run it as the 66F alignment. We're also proposing to make schedule adjustments to add earlier service to meet some of the higher ridership demands from last summer. These changes are in response to the lessons learned from the pilot service and the desire to increase productivity, ridership, and to minimize our passenger confusion. We are proposing to add this service under our current MOU agreement with the national parks. Based on the expected service levels and anticipated farebox recovery, the estimated cost to the transit district for the additional 8 weeks of weekday service is expected to be $19,000. This added cost is within our 15-16 budget, and if approved today, we would add it to our 16-17 budget. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from directors?
Just one.
Yes, please.
I know this is in the report, but I'm not remembering. So is the service then weekday from the Sausalito Ferry Terminal, and there is no service from Pohono because there is no parking?
Correct. Yeah, it's partially a function of lack of parking, not being able to set up our regular stop, which is interior to the parking lot area, so we have to move our operations back to the curbside, and we have to split them between Manzanita and Pohono. And the fact that we don't use the changeable message signs. So the changeable message signs on the weekday provides that intercept opportunity, so when they pull off, Pohono's right there as an option. So this is a different service. Fortunately, this year, if it is adopted today, we have a lot more time to market the service and to include it with our regular season materials. But I think what we found last year is those using the service did a lot more pre-planning of the service, and they wanted to be on those earlier trips out to Sausalito. So they figured out that they could take the ferry or take the bus and get to the service earlier and spend more time at the park, as opposed to just, I'm driving up, I may link Muirwoods with some other destination, but the signs tell me parking's full, so now I'm using the shuttle.
Great.
That's a great clarification, and it says to me this is a subset of our population that we're serving. Those who plan ahead
Those who
and
plan.
don't drive. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Great.
Yeah, super. Thank you, Robert. Anyone from the public want to comment on this item? All right, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
A second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? That's approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.